You've probably seen the headline, some version of it anyway. A woman turns 105, a reporter asks her secret, and she points to one humble food on her plate. The internet loves this story. It gets shared, reposted, turned into a dozen different thumbnails, each one promising the same thing: one food, one secret, one simple answer to something that actually took this woman a lifetime to build. But is there any truth to it? Or is it just another wellness myth dressed up in a nice photo and a catchy headline? Today, we're going to actually dig into this claim instead of just repeating it. I'll tell you what's real, what's exaggerated, and what actually seems to help keep blood sugar steady as we get older. No miracle food, no supplement pitch, no fear tactics, just what the research actually shows, explained in plain language. Here's the honest answer, right up front, because I think you deserve honesty before anything else. I can't verify that any specific 105-year-old said this exact thing. Stories like this circulate constantly online, often without a real, checkable source behind them. No name, no publication, no interview you can go back and read for yourself. So let's set the viral quote aside completely. We're not going to pretend it's proven when it isn't. But here's one detail most people miss when they hear these stories. They're not entirely made up out of nowhere. They're loosely based on something real, something researchers have actually spent years studying. It's called Blue Zone research, and it looks at a handful of regions around the world. Places like Okinawa in Japan, Sardinia in Italy, and Icaria in Greece, where an unusually high number of people live past 100 years old, often in good health, well into their 90s. Researchers who studied these communities noticed a pattern. And here's the important part. It wasn't one magic ingredient. It wasn't a single food that, if you ate it, guaranteed you'd live to 100. Instead, it was a group of foods that showed up again and again in what people ate every single day, meal after meal, year after year, decade after decade. That distinction matters a lot because it changes the entire story from something magical into something much more useful, something you can actually apply to your own life starting this week. If there's one category that comes closest to matching the secret food story, it's legumes, beans, lentils, chickpeas, and split peas. These humble, inexpensive foods show up constantly across every single blue zone that researchers have studied. In Okinawa, it's often soybeans in different forms. In Sardinia, it's fava beans and chickpeas. In Icaria, it's lentils and beans cooked slowly with vegetables and olive oil. Different regions, different cultures, different recipes passed down through generations, but the same basic ingredient sitting at the center of the plate. Here's why that matters for blood sugar specifically, and I want to walk through this slowly because understanding the why makes the how much easier to stick with. Legumes are high in soluble fiber. Soluble fiber is a type of fiber that dissolves in water and forms a kind of gel in your digestive system. That gel slows down how quickly sugar enters your bloodstream after a meal. Instead of a sharp spike followed by a crash, the kind that can leave you feeling shaky, tired, or suddenly hungry again an hour later, you tend to get a slower, steadier rise and a more gradual decline. That steadiness is a big part of what healthy blood sugar regulation actually looks like on the inside, even if you never see a graph of it. But here's the detail most headlines skip entirely, and it's probably the most important thing in this whole video. This isn't about one bowl of beans acting like medicine, swallowed once and solving a problem. It's about a consistent pattern, day after day, over years, sometimes decades. That's a very different story than eat this one thing and you're fixed. It's slower, it's less exciting, it doesn't make for a great thumbnail, but it's also the version that's actually true. And honestly, it's the version that respects your intelligence. Let's be precise here, because precision matters more than hype, especially when we're talking about your health. Multiple studies looking at legume consumption have found it's associated with modestly better fasting blood sugar and improved insulin sensitivity. I want to define that term for a moment because it comes up a lot and it's worth understanding. Insulin is the hormone your pancreas releases to help move sugar out of your bloodstream and into your cells, where it can be used for energy. When your body responds well to insulin, meaning it's sensitive to it, your blood sugar tends to stay more stable throughout the day. When that sensitivity declines, which can happen with age, weight gain, or certain health conditions, blood sugar tends to run higher and become harder to manage. Legumes, through their fiber content, seem to gently support that sensitivity over time. The blue zone regions we mentioned also report lower rates of type 2 diabetes compared to many other parts of the world. And this is the open loop worth closing properly, because I don't want to leave you with a false impression that doesn't prove legumes alone are responsible for that outcome. These communities also tend to walk far more than the average person in a car-dependent country. They eat fewer ultra-processed foods overall. They tend to have strong social connections and lower chronic stress, both of which research separately links to better health outcomes, including better blood sugar control. Diet is one piece of a much larger picture, not the whole picture by itself. Anyone who tells you it's just the beans is oversimplifying a genuinely complex, multi-layered story. So the honest takeaway isn't that beans cure blood sugar problems, because no single food cures anything, and you should be cautious of anyone who claims otherwise. The honest takeaway is that beans, lentils, and chickpeas are one well-supported piece of a bigger pattern that seems to help, alongside movement, whole foods, and social connection. That's a less flashy sentence than the headline promised, but it's the one that will actually hold up if you build your habits around it. So what does this mean practically for someone in their 50s or 60s who's trying to keep their blood sugar steady as they get older? It doesn't mean overhauling your diet overnight, throwing out your kitchen, or buying anything special or expensive. It means small, repeatable swaps that fit into the life you already have. Here's a detail worth knowing, one that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. Fiber works best when it's part of the meal itself, not added as an afterthought or a supplement sprinkled on top. A cup of lentil soup eaten before a meal, or a handful of beans mixed into a salad, a stew, or a grain bowl tends to blunt the blood sugar spike from the rest of that meal too, not just from the beans themselves. This is sometimes called the second meal effect. It's a fascinating piece of research that shows what you eat earlier in the day can actually influence how your body handles sugar later, even hours later, at your next meal. Eating legumes at breakfast or lunch, for example, appears to improve your body's blood sugar response at dinner, even if dinner itself doesn't contain any beans at all. It's a small, practical detail, but it's one of the more useful reasons to make legumes a regular daily or near daily habit rather than an occasional side dish you have once a month. Here's what you can actually do with all of this information in a way that's realistic and sustainable. Try adding a serving of beans, lentils, or chickpeas to 2 or 3 meals a week to start, whether that's in soups, salads, or as a simple side dish alongside vegetables. If you're not used to eating much fiber currently, increase the amount slowly over several weeks and make sure you're drinking enough water throughout the day, since a sudden jump in fiber intake can cause temporary digestive discomfort like bloating. This is normal and usually settles down as your gut adjusts. Pair legumes with vegetables and a modest portion of protein, rather than relying heavily on refined carbohydrates like white bread or white rice alongside them. That combination, fiber, vegetables, and protein together, is what seems to matter most for keeping blood sugar steady across an entire meal, not just the legumes in isolation. And if you're already managing diabetes or prediabetes with medication or a specific treatment plan from your doctor, please understand that this isn't a replacement for that plan. It's a supportive habit that can work alongside your existing care, not a substitute for it. Everyone's body responds a little differently to food, and that becomes especially true as we age, and especially if you're taking medication that affects blood sugar or blood clotting. Some people tolerate a big increase in legumes easily and notice a difference within weeks. Others need to introduce them much more gradually, in smaller amounts, to avoid digestive discomfort. If you have kidney concerns, take blood thinners, or manage diabetes with insulin or other medications, it's genuinely worth talking to your doctor or a registered dietitian before making any significant changes to your diet. They know your specific health history, your labs, your medications, and they can tell you exactly what fits your situation in a way that a general video like this one never could. And just to be completely clear, because this matters more than anything else I've said today. This video is general health information intended to help you think more critically about the health claims you see online. It is not personalized medical advice. It's not a diagnosis and it's not a treatment plan. It is not a substitute for talking to your own doctor about your own body, your own blood work, and your own individual circumstances. Please treat it as a starting point for a conversation, not the final word. So, fact or myth? The specific quote from a specific 105-year-old, the exact story that probably brought you to this video in the first place, impossible to verify, and honestly, probably more legend than fact. The kind of story that gets more polished and more dramatic every time it's shared. But the pattern behind it, the idea that legumes, beans, lentils, and chickpeas play a small, steady, supporting role in the diet of long lived populations around the world, that part genuinely holds up under scrutiny. It's not a miracle. It's not a secret. It's just a quiet, consistent habit, repeated for decades, alongside a whole lifestyle of movement, real food, and strong relationships. If you found this useful, and if you'd like more videos like this one, ones that actually slow down and separate what's proven from what's just a compelling story, consider subscribing. We break down health headlines like this every single week, so you never have to wonder whether what you're reading online is actually backed by research or just backed by a good photo.